Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to apologize on there being no videos these last few weeks as I was under the weather and decided to take some time off from YouTube. Before we get started, be sure to click subscribe and click the bell to get notifications on all upcoming Sopranos content and the many Saints of Newark content as well. And be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon and become a Soprano Theories member here on YouTube. Links will be in the description below. As discussed in my previous videos, part of what makes The Sopranos so compelling to watch even after all these years was the introduction of an anti-hero in Tony Soprano to the audience. Throughout the series, audiences tended to side with Tony on numerous occasions, but then at the same time, they tended to drift away from Tony Soprano as his true colors became more apparent towards the end. Whether it was cheating on Carmela with Svetlana or the multiple murders that Tony committed, he captured our hearts while also making us despise him. In a similar way, the same concepts and principles can be applied to Tony's wife, Carmela, as audiences got to see how two-faced Carmela really was and what really drove her in life, and why she forced herself to ultimately stay with Tony despite him cheating and the numerous murders that he had under his belt. As the series went on, fans went on to realize in The Sopranos' mob world, everyone involved with The Sopranos are all horrible people. They're all people who have dedicated their lives to focus on survival in this selfish and greed-infused fictional world. Carmela and everyone else around her are simply focused on their own well-being, and these individuals will do anything and everything to get ahead in life if it means benefiting their own lives. Even if this means using someone for money or committing heinous acts of violence like murdering a family member, Carmela is no stranger to the greedy lifestyle of the mob. Appearing in 85 episodes, Edie Falco's performance of Carmela Soprano seems to get more impressive after each episode and after every rewatch. While her husband Tony was a natural-born sociopath having grown up in a life of crime in the mafia thanks to his father and childhood mentor Dickie Moltisanti, Carmela on the other hand was just like the average individual in society, as Carmela grew up a civilian. But when it came to marrying Tony and basically marrying into the mafia, she knew what she was getting herself into. Not only did she know what she was getting herself into by marrying a powerful individual like Tony Soprano, but she loved every minute of it. Carmela absolutely adored the mini mansion that she called home throughout the series, as the 6,000 square foot home was impeccable, supported by marble floors, chandeliers resting above her head, and even having her own home theater. The Sopranos' home was glamorous. However, there are numerous occasions where we see Carmela playing the innocent card throughout the series. While she may grow in frustration with the countless of girlfriends Tony had over the series, and even seemed worried on the outside of just the thought of her being alone with the kids if God forbid something were to happen to Tony, deep down inside, Carmela loved the mafia lifestyle that she lived on a daily basis. She absolutely adored the clothes in her designer tracksuits, the jewelry, and the often comped meals at Vesuvio, and always having a maid by her side, all while either her Mercedes or Porsche were parked in the garage. And above it all, she loved the respect she gained from individuals in her community and basically not having to work at all. And yet, even with all the glamour that surrounded her, it's her trade-off of being a civilian and being born into mafia royalty that makes her one of the series' and film's most contradicting characters to ever appear on screen. Nowhere do we see Carmela's guilt and shame be on full display than in Season 3's Episode 7, Second Opinion. Earlier on in the series, Dr. Melfi referred Carmela to a Jewish colleague of hers to try and help Carmela see through Tony. This scene here with the psychiatrist is Edie Falco at her best and is one of the most powerful scenes throughout the series. We can see that in this private conversation just how much Tony's lifestyle and adultery and his murders weighs on Carmela. As when we see her during this conversation with the therapist, she is incredibly shaken as his words rock Carmela to her core.
His crimes, they are organized crime.
The mafia.
Oh, Jesus.
This therapy session is the beginning of the end for Carmela Soprano, as this displays her seminal moment within the series. We watch as she would continue to turn a blind eye to her husband's murders, money laundering, and the countless acts of adultery just to live the lavish, luxurious lifestyle she always wanted, even if it meant reluctantly taking back Tony after their separation, despite the two displaying hatred towards one another. Ultimately, Carmela couldn't see through her narrow-minded mentality and mindset when it came to Tony. Carmela enjoyed the benefits of her husband's blood money, and more often than not, she was just as guilty as her husband, as she always accepted the blood money without any hesitation or reluctance and would often spend it on her children, herself, and even her friends. This was usually the case with Carmela, as she would often display guilt and shame, all while corrupting her own children towards a life of crime. As the series progresses, so does Carmela's guilt and shame. Eventually, Carmela does come to the realization of her making a deal with the devil, and in this case, the devil happens to be her husband. The timing of her partial realization is somewhat interesting, as she comes to her epiphany while she's on the verge of being alone due to her husband being in a coma. Spending countless of days at the hospital and basically being alone without her husband and having no one to lean on besides her children, and surrounded by men who are just as worse as her husband as acting as moral support, Carmela comes to terms with herself that a life without her provider for income in Tony and her best friend could potentially be in the works. So in a move of desperation, she reaches out to her husband's therapist and Dr. Melfi. And even still, during this conversation with Dr. Melfi, Carmela confesses that while she made the deal to marry Tony, her children did not. She confesses that yes, she would lie to her children about their father's profession and even admitting to knowing everything the man Tony really was. She did love the lavish, luxurious mafia lifestyle that Tony provided for her and her children, but Carmela still couldn't decide whether she loved Tony for the man he really was or for the gifts that he provided for her. Even with her husband in a coma, she still can't see through the fact that the clothes, cars, and mini mansion that she has are all a result of her husband committing heinous acts of violence.
The minute I met Tony, I knew who that guy was. And I don't know if I loved him in spite of it. Or because of it.
But also, she still can't come to terms with herself that her husband is a criminal.
You know, I'd go to my priest and I would cry and say how bad I felt about how my husband made his money, but that was bullshit. Because there are far bigger crooks than my husband.
We can see that Carmela's decision to stay with Tony and to be complicit to her husband's crimes and blood money has affected her children. This is especially evident in the last season of the show with her daughter Meadow, as Meadow is viewed as this bright and ambitious individual who Carmela and Tony are both extremely proud to call their daughter. However, we see Meadow become a duplicate of her mother as the series progresses, as she ends her relationship with Finn due to the particular reason of Finn not justifying her father's life of crime and source of income. Right from the series' beginning, it was clear that Meadow was extremely smart and wanted to pursue a career in medicine. However, come the show's ending, Meadow abruptly changes career paths to become a defense lawyer, ironically wanting to represent people like her father in the near future. And the same can be said for AJ drifting towards a life of crime, after he wanted to kill Uncle Junior after he shot his father. In the very last episode of the series, Made in America, Carmela sees Meadow's friend Hunter for the first time in years, as we last saw her in the series' pilot episode. And if you didn't know, Hunter was also played by David Chase's daughter. Hunter and Meadow's relationship was interesting, as it was clear that Carmela despised Hunter and viewed her as a restraint towards Meadow. In the eyes of Carmela, Hunter provided a bad influence towards Meadow. We can see this in the series' pilot episode, by Hunter gloating about skiing in Aspen.
Now my wife feels this friend is a bad influence.
It's so cool you're gonna be able to come to Aspen with my family at Christmas.
Hunter was the casual screw-up in life, an outcome that Carmela feared would happen to her own children. During this last encounter between Hunter and Carmela, we'd learn that Hunter was kicked out of college for partying and drunk driving. It's here where Carmela finds out that Hunter is currently in her second year of med school.
I'm in my second year of med school.
Oh.
Yeah, I completed undergrad at Purchase, got my act together.
When this realization of Hunter, the casual screw-up, the bad influence for Meadow, and the girl who got kicked out of college for partying and drunk driving, is going to become more successful than her own daughter who had it all thanks to her husband's blood money, Carmela can't even pretend to be polite towards her daughter's friend. We can see the look of shock, fear, disappointment, and jealousy that rests on her face as she stands in her daughter's room in complete awe. Carmela's ignorance is on full display here, as she can't stand to hear the news and leaves the room before she goes into a panic. Shockingly, she doesn't even say congratulations to Hunter, something every mom would have done in this situation. This news is heartbreaking for Carmela, as medicine was supposed to be her daughter's field of choice, her daughter's profession and path in life. Meadow being a doctor was the moral decision, and Carmela recognizes in this situation that she is to blame for her daughter's inconsistency when it came to her career. On my very first watch of the series, I initially viewed Carmela to be an innocent figure trapped in a toxic mafia world thanks to her husband. However, after multiple rewatches, Carmela is just as guilty as her husband. Whether it was taking money out of the bird feeder, serving as an accessory to her husband's plan to hide incriminating evidence at Green Grove, or knowing where all the guns in the home were, her act of playing the innocent card wasn't fooling anyone, especially Tony. Throughout the series, Carmela is either stressing her guilt and shamefulness as a result of being married to a man like Tony, and then on the other hand, she can countlessly be seen showing no remorse or themes of ignorance. Throughout the series, we watched Carmela pick and choose her narratives with her own marriage that would benefit herself. As more often than not, this was ignoring the criminal aspects and adulterous acts being committed by her husband. But yet, at the same time, she justified accepting gifts from her husband while also turning a blind eye towards him, and more specifically, how he paid for the gifts and obtained the items in the first place. At the heart of it all, Carmela Soprano was an accomplice while also being an enabler. She knew well before she got married to Tony Soprano that he was a career criminal, and nothing would ever change that. Not a book recommended by her therapist, therapy with Dr. Melfi, or even having Father Phil around the house. Tony would always be a sociopathic murderer. In hindsight, looking back on Carmela, she really makes herself look embarrassing and foolish. She admitted to being attracted to Tony's criminality and stating that his power was a turn-on.
You know that's always gotten to me. When you used to pick me up and throw me over your shoulder. Oh my God, Tony. Used to get me so hot down there.
She knows that her husband has committed horrible acts of violence and allowed it to impact her life, her children, and to be brought into her home. Nowhere do we see this compelling confession done by Carmela than in Season 1's Episode 5, College, where she confesses to Father Phil.
Allowing what I know is evil in my house. Allowing my children, oh my God, my sweet children, to be a part of it.
And in reality, she still did nothing about it because what really caught her attention was the glamour.
Because I wanted things for them. I wanted a better life. Good schools. I wanted this house. Wanted money in my hands. Money to buy anything I ever wanted.
There are other brilliant scenes throughout the show that capture Carmela's guilt and shamefulness like these ones here.
The only reason you have anything is because of my fucking sweat, and you know every step of the way exactly how it works. But you walk around that fucking mansion in your $500 shoes and your diamond rings, and you act like butter wouldn't melt in your mouth.
Carmela was constantly in a cognitive disagreement mindset, as she was just as big of a hypocrite as Tony was.
You think for me it's all about things.
No, I forced all this shit on you. What you really crave is a little Hyundai and a simple gold heart on a chain.
For Carmela and anyone in life, facing reality can be extremely difficult to come to terms with, as it was difficult for Carmela to come to terms with her reality, with how her husband makes a living, why and how he bombards her with expensive gifts, and the reality of living on her own if something were to happen to Tony. So it was much easier for Carmela to distract herself and hide from the dark, toxic mafia lifestyle with clothes, jewelry, and furniture. After all, Carmela was stuck in a world where she was forced to turn a blind eye that individuals that she liked, such as Adriana, Pussy, and Jackie Jr., were either killed by her husband or someone that she knew. Towards the end of the series, Carmela begins to hide herself from the harsh reality that lied on the outside of her glamorous home. By her neglecting Tony's reality, she became more accustomed to lying and being a part of the mafia life. So much so that it quickly became a routine. Just like the saying of you knock on the devil's door long enough, eventually he's going to answer. This is much like Carmela always knowing that Tony was unfaithful and ignoring his infidelity and being able to somewhat handle it, until the call from Irina came when reality set in for Carmela. She would countlessly lie to herself and tell herself that she was a good person. Whether it was ignoring what her husband did for a living, or accepting his blood money, or bullshitting to her priest to force herself to make herself feel better about her husband's profession and adultery. Obviously, it's no secret that Carmela Soprano did love the lavish, luxurious mafia lifestyle that Tony provided for her and her children. But Carmela still couldn't decide whether she loved Tony for the man he was or because of the gifts he provided for her. She simply couldn't see through the blinders that she had become much like every other mafia wife and mistress while also denying that her husband is a criminal. What are your thoughts about the hypocrisy of Carmela? Was she simply using Tony to live a better life with the lavish gifts that he provided for her and her children? Or is she just as guilty as her husband by spending his blood money? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to click the like button as I had a ton of fun making this video after a few weeks off from YouTube. As always, for more Sopranos content and the many Saints of Newark content, keep it locked here, right here on this channel.